Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. I want to start a new series on the podcast that I'm calling The Culture of Private Practice. And this first conversation is one that I've been thinking about for a long time. It's something that I see often, and it's something I've experienced personally. I spend time in therapist communities, Facebook groups, professional spaces, conversations behind the scenes. And there's a pattern I've noticed that keeps repeating itself. A therapist posts a question. Usually it's vulnerable. It might sound like, I'm thinking about adjusting my rates from this to this. How have others approached this? Or, I'm considering offering intensives in this way. Has anyone else structured them like this? Or, I'm new to private practice and I'm trying to decide whether to offer direct billing or not. And if you read these posts carefully, you can feel it, the risk in the question, the subtle exposure. Because when someone asks a business question in our field, they're often revealing something about how they're practicing. They're revealing their fee structure, their business model, their growth stage, their ambition, their uncertainty. And that takes courage. But instead of curiosity, instead of asking clarifying questions, instead of tell me more about your context, what comes back often is things like, that sounds unethical. I would never charge that. That's not accessible. You shouldn't be doing that. And I see this happen over and over again. And I've been on the receiving end of it. When I graduated and entered private practice, I did something that surprised some people. I went straight into private practice right after graduating, and the response from some corners of the profession was immediate. It's too soon. You're not ready. That's irresponsible. And what struck me wasn't disagreement, it was the certainty, the confidence with which people who knew little to nothing about me felt qualified to criticize my decision. They didn't know that I had decades of business experience behind me, that I had run and sold companies, that I had years of leadership behind me, that I had worked in counseling centers before becoming a therapist, that I wasn't 24 years old, fresh out of undergrad. They didn't know my age, they didn't know my background, and they didn't know my capacity. They saw a snapshot and they filled in the rest. And I remember thinking, this is interesting because we are trained, deeply trained as therapists in context. We're trained to hold nuance. We're trained not to assume. And yet in professional spaces, sometimes nuance disappears. I won't pretend that it didn't sting because it did. Not because I doubted my readiness, but because it was a reminder that professional spaces aren't always psychologically safe. That experience taught me something important. It taught me to be selective about where I shared, selective about who I asked, selective about which rooms felt steady and which didn't. And I know that I'm not alone in this. And here's what concerns me the most. When a therapist risks vulnerability and is met with criticism or shaming, something shifts. They don't usually argue back and they don't usually defend themselves loudly. They often quietly withdraw. They stop asking questions and they start building in isolation. They become more cautious, more guarded, more self protected. And isolation in private practice is already real. We work behind closed doors. We make business decisions quietly, and we often wonder if we're doing it right. And if professional spaces become places where curiosity is replaced with moral superiority, we lose something important. We lose the opportunity to learn from each other. We lose collaboration. We lose diversity in business models. And slowly, we create a culture where therapists feel they must either conform or stay silent. And that's not a strong profession, that's a fragile one. Now, I want to be very clear about something. There is unethical behavior in every profession out there, and we absolutely need accountability. But what I see more often isn't clear ethical violations, it's preference being framed as principle. It's discomfort being labeled as wrongdoing. And there's a difference between that's unethical and that's not how I would do it. There's a difference between that harms clients and that makes me uncomfortable. Professional maturity means knowing the difference. If a licensing board wouldn't call it unethical, perhaps we need to pause before we do. And instead of correcting, we might ask, what informed that decision? How are you thinking about accessibility? What does your regulatory body say? Curiosity doesn't weaken ethics, it strengthens them. Now, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on why this pattern exists, and I don't think it's because therapists are unkind. I think it's often because of things like we were trained in scarcity. We were trained to prioritize service over sustainability. We're rarely taught business skills, and we were told that wanting more income is suspect. We're absorbed with the idea that growth equals greed. So when someone builds a practice differently, charges fees differently, scales differently, it can activate something in us. Things like fear, comparison, uncertainty. And when we don't take the time to examine those feelings, they come out sideways as criticism, as correction, as moral framing. But underneath that often is insecurity, and that's human. What matters is what we do with it. When I joined Build Your Private Practice years ago as a client, one of the things that stood out to me was the tone of the community. You could ask a question about pricing, about scaling, about systems, about income goals, and instead of shame, you'd get, tell me more. Here's what worked for me. Have you considered this? It wasn't hype, it wasn't pressure, it was steady, constructive, respectful, and that changes everything. When therapists feel safe to ask questions, they build better practices. And when they build better practices, they reduce therapist burnout. And when that burnout is reduced, clients are the ones who benefit. This isn't just about feelings, it's about sustainability. If you are in therapist communities, and I know most of us are, I want to offer you something simple. Before responding to a post, ask yourself some questions. Am I responding from curiosity or from reactivity? Am I adding value or adding weight? Am I asking a question or assigning judgment? You don't have to agree with every business model, and you don't have to want what someone else wants. But we can be thoughtful without being dismissive. We can hold ethics without shaming, and we can disagree without diminishing. And if you're listening to this and thinking, that's happened to me, I want to say something clearly. You don't have to defend every decision you make about your practice, and you don't have to absorb every opinion as truth. Not everyone in a comment section knows your full story, and not everyone understands your financial realities. Not everyone knows your long-term vision. You are allowed to build a practice that aligns with your experience, your capacity, and your values. And you are allowed to seek out spaces that feel steady. You don't have to figure this out alone, but you do get to choose who you build alongside. The culture of private practice isn't something abstract. It's shaped in small moments, in comment sections, in group replies, in how we respond to vulnerability. We are a profession built on empathy. So let's bring that empathy into our professional spaces too. We can build real practices and we can allow each other to build them differently. If this conversation has resonated with you, I'd love it if you would subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. Remember, the work you do matters. And if you're looking for a community where you can ask business questions without shame, you are always welcome inside the Build Your Private Practice Facebook group. Thanks for being here. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you too. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.